Boxing is, and it probably always will be, my favorite sport. It wasn't always my favorite sport. It was really only in the last kind of 12 years where it really became that. But boxing, it it's a sport that I absolutely love. But saying that, I couldn't tell you the first fight I ever watched, live on TV or anything like that. There's certain memories like that just kind of they just they just pass you by, so to speak. But I do remember one of my earliest boxing memories, so to speak, not necessarily a fight, but I remember in 2000, I think it was 2002. I'm just going to check this guy's box where I can make doubly sure. Yeah, it was 2002. In about the year 2001, back home in Dublin, back home in Swords, we were one of the first, in fact, we might have been the only family in our respective area who had Sky. So we were one of the first to get it in, and obviously as the years progressed, everyone that was the thing. Everyone seemed to get Sky. We were one of the first, so it meant that we had access to, we got the full package. We had access to sports, we everything, everything. So at the time, I was only 2002. How old would I have been? Would have been about 8, thereabouts. Yeah, I would have. If it was June, I would have been about 8. So I would have only been a little boy. No idea who Mike Tyson was or Lennox Lewis, and obviously this video is about the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight. If I haven't already mentioned that, hit that like button and hit subscribe as well. I'm not many off 20,800. I'd like to get that hopefully in the next day or two. That'd be brilliant. But hit the like button, that will definitely help. But I remember at the time he was getting ready to fight Lennox Lewis, and I was a big football fan right then. I watched a lot of football, and obviously Sky Sports News showed a lot. It was mainly football news. It was primarily football news. So I remember watching Sky Sports News at the time, and I forget who it was, but and it was all about Lennox Lewis, Mike Tyson. I remember, and it was all about the build up to the fight, and a pundit, it was obviously a UK pundit. I couldn't tell you who it was. It sounds like something Colin Hart would say, but I can't say for definite it was him. Was picking Mike Tyson to knock Lennox Lewis out in 3 rounds. He didn't. For those who don't know, I'm sure everyone does, but he didn't. And that's one of the earliest memories I have of boxing. And Mike Tyson, that name stuck with us. So as I'm getting older and you're hearing about Mike Tyson, and you got to bear in mind, like, Mike Tyson at that point, that was right near the back end of his career. He fought 3 more times. He only won one of those fights. So you're talking really at the back end of Mike Tyson's career. So when I got older and I became a teenager, you start to watch more of Mike Tyson. You get to know who these guys are. You might not be a hardcore boxing fan, but you know Mike Tyson. You see his highlights, and his highlight reels are phenomenal. People just, even if you're not a boxing fan, you'd watch them just because of what you're seeing. It's phenomenal. So I knew who Mike Tyson was even before I really became a big hardcore fan. I knew Mike Tyson, Muhammad Ali, I knew of Rocky Marciano, people like that. More so knew Rocky Marciano and Joe Louis from that scene and coming to America, the barber scene. But I still did know who they were. And, obviously then you get into the sport as I am now, and obviously I do a YouTube channel and other things as well. The boxing has given me back, and I hear things, obviously in the know a little bit, and that's all well and good. And whenever I explain to people about boxing and this, that, and the other, why I love it, they always chuck a few things back at you to say, oh, it's barbaric, and you can't really argue with them on that one. But they'll say things like, but they'll let people in their 50s potentially box. You hear stories about that, and you say, yeah, it's few and far between, and unfortunately, that is the way, it is the case. It is few and far between. They're normally on some of those kind of small Mickey Mouse shows in God knows where. And then they bring this one up. Jake Paul, Mike Tyson. Now, I'm not going to give a detailed prediction on this fight or anything like that. I think this fight isn't, I'm not going to swear, but if I could, a word beginning with F would be starting this. And I will be saying that this is an effing farce. It really, truly is. Now, apparently Mike Tyson's going to be well paid. What good is that? Really? What good is that Mike Tyson, this is on BoxRec. This is going to go on his record. Mike Tyson has 6 losses. His last fight was in June of 2005 against Kevin McBride. Do you know Kevin McBride was 32-4 when he went into that fight? Kevin McBride ended his career with 10 losses, 7 of them by knockout. Kevin McBride would have been a journeyman today. And you gotta bear in mind that was Kevin McBride. That was in the mid 2000s. So Lennox Lewis had gone at that point. Holyfield he was well past it if he was still fighting. I know Holyfield had several comebacks, but the Klitschko's were kind of, Vladimir hadn't really come into his own. I don't know. I think Vitali might have actually been away from the ring at that point because he had a bad knee injury for a couple of years. The heavyweight division stunk at that point. Like, it stunk. Thank God I wasn't following heavyweight boxing back then, because it was absolutely abysmal. I mean, some of America's best heavyweights, no disrespect, Chris Bird wasn't a terrible fighter, but he wouldn't do anything today. You would have liked Jameel McCline. Jameel McCline was being talked of as a prospect. I remember when he fought Klitschko, Vladimir, and he got annihilated. I think he already had a couple of losses at that point. Tony Thompson, was he really? No, I think Tony Thompson was still kind of coming into it. Chris Arreola, who has Hassim Rahman, John Ruiz. I mean, these names pale into insignificance in comparison to what we have in the 90s, or what we had in the 90s, and what we have today. Even the next crop of heavyweights you see up and coming, there's something there. They might not have the personality of a Fury, of a Joshua, of an Usyk, of a Wilder, but there's something there in terms of talent. There was none of that. And this is a guy who was beating Mike Tyson. Danny Williams, who unfortunately is still fighting to this day. Tragic. But these were the guys who Mike Tyson was losing to. And he wasn't losing to them in a sense of he was getting completely dominated around it like that, but you could tell there was nothing there. And that was Mike Tyson when he was a lot younger. Mike Tyson was born, doesn't say actually his date of birth, but he's got to be pushing 60. Definitely. I think he was born in the 30th of June 1966. He's now currently 58 years old, right? So Mike Tyson was pushing 40. He was pushing 40 in that Kevin McBride fight. He's 58 years old. Why is this fight happening? And it amazes me how many people are actually looking forward to it and think it's going to be competitive. It's amazing to me because Mike Tyson still to this day has this aura about him where people see maybe 5 seconds of him on the pads, and that they take those 5 seconds where he looks really good or looks sharp and fast, and they'll be like, oh, that's Mike Tyson, like the old Mike Tyson. When Mike Tyson released some of those clips of him on the pads back in 2020, you had people saying, he could beat the likes of Dave Allen, he could make a little run at heavyweight. People, that was 4 years ago. He was 54 years old at the time, and again, you point out that he was losing to Kevin McBride, Danny Williams when he was in his late 30s. Do I need to go on? Because I can. And thankfully he had that little exhibition with Roy Jones. It was a little nothing thing, and I thought that would be the end of it. And then inexplicably they announce this fight. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Jake Paul is how old? 28? 27, 28? Thereabouts. How old is he? 27, the problem child. Jake Paul will be lighter than Mike Tyson significantly. He's really a pumped up cruiserweight. But Jake Paul has youth on his side. He's not a terrible fighter by any stretch of the imagination. He's not going to win any world titles. But this isn't Mike Tyson of the 1980s or the 1990s or of the 2000s. This is a 58-year-old Mike Tyson who hasn't had a professional fight in well over a decade, who was losing to people who he would have absolutely wiped the floor with in his absolute prime. He was in a wheelchair only a year ago, and not like because he had major issues, but I think he did have some issues. And I just think this is a recipe for absolute disaster. Normally I'm a fan of that's what I think this will be, car crash TV. That's exactly what it's going to be. Normally I'm a fan of car crash TV. I like seeing the boogies and the wings, when they were talking about Christopher Lovejoy, Dave Allen. I was all for that because I thought that would be, if nothing, it would be a bit of fun. You'd watch just a bit of car crash TV. What's the difference? Well, saying that, wings and boogie, I mean, God only knows if those rounds were any longer than a minute, you could have had a problem. And I'm not talking about both guys knocking lumps out of one another. You could have other problems. But you know what I mean? You see this and you're just thinking, that's just, as silly as it is, I'll have a laugh while it's there. I'm not going to laugh at a guy 30 years his senior, a guy knocking a guy out 30 years his senior, and a guy who was so good at one point, who was one of the most exciting, maybe the most exciting heavyweight of all time, going in there against a YouTuber. And Jake Paul, he could, his brother Logan does WWE, which, like that, I'm sure it doesn't tickle, but it's scripted, Boxing, anything can happen. And this weekend, he's going in there with Mike Tyson, and he is going to knock Mike Tyson's spark out. and I just don't want to see it. I think this is just a farce. It really, truly is. I mean, why? It's on Netflix, isn't it? Of course it's on Netflix. Why? You know? Just why? I'll be doing a watch along of the Latino night card on the Zone and Sky and TNT. CBS versus Zordo. It's a good undercard too. I'll be doing a watch along of that and doing reviews of that. This card, this Mike Tyson card, and there is some decent fights on the undercard. Don't get me wrong, but Tyson versus Paul, 2024. What the actual F? That's what I gotta say on that one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'll leave it there, people. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. Peace.